to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number podcast for all things Assassin's Creed.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 132 of Let's Talk Assassin's Creed. In this week's episode, we are going to be talking about Transmedia. This franchise is not just games. There is a huge range of there's short films, there's the movie, there's books, there's comics. There is a lot to cover. But before we talk about Transmedia, if you've been listening to us for a few weeks or for a few months, you will know that Declan, our dear lead host, has been desperately waiting and saving up for Elden Ring. We're recording this beginning of May, so Elden Ring's been out now for 3 months, 4 months, and he's been desperately saving up. And there's been some news. Declan.
Hello and welcome to the non-Assassin's Creed podcast. Yes, I have got Elden Ring and I will be streaming it on our Let's Talk Twitch, which is exciting. But is it really bad, James, that when I done the tutorial area and it came up with a prompt of you can stealth, that I suddenly thought, what if Assassin's Creed went Dark Souls, like Elden Ring? Like, literally, if you screw up stealth, you're dead instantly. You resync. It's that difficult. Imagine how annoying but fun that would be.
Annoying but rewarding, I guess.
Yeah,
I'd be up for that.
Imagine playing Valhalla, where you could kill the smaller enemies quite easily.
Can I just say you've started that thought with the game with perhaps the most broken stealth in the entire franchise. Can you imagine having that level of difficulty with stealth that doesn't even function? Anyway, yes, I see your point though.
Let's see the stealth function, but imagine like Odyssey. Actually, Odyssey would be best for this. You know the gear system.
Mm.
Imagine if you had like that gear system where you want to make sure you care for your weapons, and it adds a little realism for assassins if they don't keep the hidden blade in check or the gear in check, they're going to screw up. But imagine like trolling through Odyssey, you've not bothered keeping an eye on your weapon durability, for example, and you run into a camp like guns blazing, I am Cassandra, I am Mystios, fear me, and then you get killed. That would actually bring a real sense of, okay, I've got to stealth. Now let's sneak, let's get through the camp. Great, I've assassinated everyone. But if you pay attention to your gear, you could still, kill everybody instantly. It adds like it doesn't have to be as hard as Elden Ring because I'm just started. I want to do an exploration at the moment. I'm not going anywhere near like main story stuff. And I've been squished by a sheep. Don't ask, but
By a sheep.
yes, by a sheep.
Okay.
I was meant to kill the sheep. It ran at me because it couldn't run anywhere else. It alerted a big ogre thing that sat on me, and I died instantly. So Assassin's Creed does not need to be that difficult, but kind of like more the case of your character shouldn't be melee sponges. Just take every hit imaginable and you're fine. Like I wouldn't mind a little bit more realism to force you into stealth and parkour. I mean, what?
I to be honest, I would be up for that. The game should perhaps be weighted more towards rewarding stealth. Definitely. How many hours are you into to Elden Ring?
52 minutes.
Okay. Have you finished like the tutorial level or location?
This will make you laugh. Right, I know it's off tangent, but I have to say this. Xbox has a really nifty feature where you can play a game while it's downloading. One of my favourite features. However, when you play the game, it slows the download down. So I got to 50% and I thought I'll try it out. And for the whole hour, it was stuck going up to 100%. I was locked to the tutorial room and I just literally spent 52 minutes in the tutorial room waiting for the download to complete. So I've not even left the tutorial room yet.
How long did it must be a big game? How long did the download take?
um 1 hour and 56 minutes.
That's not bad actually. Fair
It's
enough. Fair enough.
actually kind of is surprising, and I actually do really want to bring this up. Elden Ring is 46 gigabytes big,
That's
and
not that big actually compared to some of the monsters we've had recently.
Valhalla is 112.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in my opinion, Elden Ring has a big open world. There is a lot to see. I've looked at the map online. I've seen some let's plays, like non-story let's plays, just exploration. There is a lot to find in the world and a lot of like hidden secret bosses, but the game's still 46 megabytes. Why is Valhalla 112? And that's before any DLCs are added. It's just mind blowing how chunky it is.
It's a good question. Yeah,
Too
is it
big.
as simple as map size? Therefore, lots of visual assets. I don't know.
I think it's update fixes because they had to compress the file size last year, and when they compressed the file size, mine went from 160 to 112. So
Right,
I don't know.
right.
It's even bigger than Odyssey.
Yeah, Odyssey's about 90 something gigabytes with the crossover. 92 gigabytes, 96 gigabytes. It's huge. Yeah.
So why is Valhalla bigger? Wouldn't you expect Odyssey to be bigger?
Well, that was one of the things. Like when Valhalla was approaching release, it was. I think I remember hearing both that it was a smaller map because people were saying Odyssey's map was too big, but actually once you factor in Ireland, Francia, Vinland, the mythical realms, it's a bigger game. There may be a lot less water and more land, whereas the Greek map has, I think it's like 60% water. Um, yeah, Valhalla's huge. It really is.
Before we get into Transmedia, last thing I'll say, even though I do love Odyssey and Black Flag, to me they're just boating simulators. They're great games with great story, great combat.
Did you just call Black Flag, which many fans would put as one of the best games in the franchise? Did you just call it a boating simulator?
I did, yes.
People are going to be mashing the unsubscribe button or the downvote button right now. Black Flag is an excellent Assassin's Creed game. I will just say, like, one of the common things people say is, "Oh, it's a good pirate game, but it's not a good Assassin's Creed game." Yeah. Did you use the hidden blade? Did you do parkour? Did you do all the Templar hunts? I mean, it's an Assassin's Creed game. It just happens to have some awesome ship gameplay in it as well.
I will admit, Black Flag actually does point out one of the issues in the series, though. Like, Valhalla corrected the biggest mistake that I found with Black Flag, and I know this is terrible, but Edward isn't trained to be an assassin at all. But yet, he's nimble, he's spry, he can do a leap of faith, all from the beginning. Whereas Ava is nimble, she's spry, but when she jumps into water, she just does some sort of weird legs first dive, and then she learns the leap of faith. So I always kind of find it weird that Edward knew a leap of faith since the beginning. It's just odd.
Yeah, I mean, it's there are inconsistencies with the leap of faith in the games, aren't there? I mean, why can Cassandra do one? You know, why can Bayek do them in Siwa, the starting region? He's not. I mean, yes, the the Assassin Brotherhood in theory doesn't exist then, although I think that's a bit of a retcon as well, isn't it? Um, I'm trying to think. The first one they do in Syndicate. Oh, that's from the top of the brick chimney with Henry Green, isn't it? Um, Unity's a good one because you do the leap of faith off the Bastille following Belek, but actually you've already done one back in Versailles in the previous memory. So yeah, that doesn't quite make any sense. But Edward, you see, with the parkour, I don't know whether this is actually explained in the novel or not, or whether I'm making this up. But for me, it kind of made sense that Edward would be incredibly fit and incredibly agile because he served for a number of years on ships. He's going to have good strength. He's going to have spent time clambering up the ropes and the yard arms and so on, working the sails, strong working the guns and so on. So it kind of felt okay for me that he arrived with this agility. Um, when he takes Duncan Walpole's outfit and starts doing proper parkour.
I think with Edward, like, I've just looked up. Apparently, Bayek actually was the creator of the leap of faith because it was the Medjais who did it. So anything before Bayek should not know the leap of faith. But I do
Mm.
agree from the novel, Black Flag, he should be surprisingly spry and everything. But the novel also paints him as a good fighter. with his fists, especially in the taverns, and yet he spends more time with two swords and guns in the game, which I thought he'd be more fisty than swordy.
See, again, I would that doesn't that's not a problem for me because as a pirate, he would have done so many boarding actions. He'll be skilled with cutlass, pistols, whatever. Um, I don't know how much Cooley would have had to do a leap of faith from the yard arms of the jackdaw, but yeah, I know what you mean. There are always these little inconsistencies. You know, how can this person use eagle vision before they've been trained to use it? You know, um,
How can Edward use two swords? Just saying. Cutlasses are weighty. That guy's arms must be severely ripped to be
mm.
floating around to cut two
Have you
cutlasses.
seen him during the harpooning missions?
This is not a first episode, but yes.
Indeed, the guy's strong. He's got strength.
So,
Yes. What are we here to talk about?
so should we go with what transmedia we've got? That might be a good starting
Oh,
point.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Who wants to go first? You can't.
Um, I'll go first. Let's think. So very slowly, I am purchasing the art books for the games. So I have the art books for the Layla saga. I've got the art books for Unity and Syndicate. And I would like. I don't know if they existed for all of the earlier games, but I definitely know they're available for AC3. So I'd like to collect that. I just like again. There's not a huge amount of lore in there, but I just find the artwork's amazing. The other significant book that I've got is the Abstergo Handbook, which is a fantastic. We've spoken about it before, haven't we? Several times. It's a fantastic resource for sort of the in-universe stuff and history about Abstergo, how the Animus works, their kind of how they retell history to tell different stories. It was part of the whole Unity time period, so it actually tells the story of the researcher who first relived and researched Arno's memories. And it was written by Christy Golden, who again we've spoken about before as well. With she wrote Heresy, so it's a great sort of in-universe resource as well. What else have I got? I've got the strategy guide. I'm not sure if this counts as transmedia, but I've got the strategy guide for Odyssey and Unity. I do know that I think there's been a strategy guide for most of the games, but Valhalla is the first game that doesn't have one. And I know that because a friend of the show that we've had on, I think once or twice, White Wolf Whispers, she collects the strategy guides. And this is Valhalla is the first game without one. I remember her saying that she was really disappointed because she wanted to have the complete set. And then novels. I mean, there are there are many novels. I have all of the novelizations for the games, and then I have a few of the standalone novels. So Underworld, which is the novel that tells the story of Henry Green. So it's like a prequel to the story that we get in Syndicate. So it tells Henry Green's younger days, his time in London before the Fry twins arrive, and then it very quickly skips through the Syndicate story. I've got Heresy. I mean, most of these are digital, I should say, on my Kindle. And then I've got Desert Oath, which is the sort of prequel novel for Origins. And that's it for me. What about you?
I've forgotten how to talk. I have quite a bit, surprisingly. I did not think I had.
You've had some brilliant finds in your charity shops, haven't you, in the last few months? It's
Oh,
amazing.
I know this is tangent, but I went into my local charity shop yesterday for random Lord of the Rings books. I found Children of what I mean, Children of Hurin, which is like a Christopher Tolkien book, which expands the world. Anyways, tangent. And the woman there asked me to write a list of books to find, and she's gonna like pin them behind the desk for me. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
but I have had some interesting finds. I found Brotherhood, Forsaken, Black Flag, all for £1, like free for £1. That's the best deal of my life.
3 for £1. That's amazing.
I found Unity for 50p. My partner bought Underworld for £2. I bought Odyssey full price, biggest mistake ever because it still annoys me to this day. I have the Gurman saga for Valhalla.
Oh yeah,
We
yeah.
have to talk about that because I'm annoyed at that book.
Okay. Do
I
I need
have,
to? Maybe I'll buy it and read it, and then we'll do a chat about it. Yeah.
but I'll give you some thoughts on what annoys me in a minute because
Hmm.
it's a very valid opinion in my opinion. I have Desert Oath, but I'm refusing to read it because reasons. I have
Okay. I think you're gonna
Heres.
have to tell us.
Um, I'm just burnt out of the transmedia.
Gotcha.
There's just there's when I read a book, I like connections, like a series. I've just finished the Six of Crows duology, which is the Greaseverse books, and there's two books: there's Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. They're great to read because once you finish, there's this add-on story. But with the novelizations of all the games, they're just very standalone. And even though I know it's a prequel, there's just nothing there hooking me. Like the Unity one hooked me because I wanted to know more about Elise, and there was a lot of stuff missing from the game. Underworld didn't hook me, even though the story was great from Henry Green's point of view. There was just nothing new there that I didn't expect, so it didn't really hook us. Odyssey was just like replaying the game but being told you did everything wrong.
Okay.
Literally, that's
Yeah.
all it was.
Yeah.
German Saga is basically, hey, this guy's going to meet Eivor a couple of times. His parents live in Jorvik, but you'll never hear about him in the game because reasons. Like, why? Eivor meets and works for his parents in the Jorvik arc, and they never mention Gurmund once. Bearing in mind, he joins the Heathen army, which I believe happens alongside Valhalla, and
Interesting. Okay.
there's no mention of him at all. He's part of the Heathen army, but there's no mention. He meets Eivor in England, and I think she takes him to Ravensfall, but I'm rereading the book. But no mention of him in the game. I'm sorry, that's annoying.
Mm. Mm.
I have Heresy, the first Last Descendants, which is one of the best Assassin's Creed books I've read. And then I do have the wonderful Essential Guide, because
Oh, okay. Yes.
everyone needs the Essential Guide.
Put it on my. I'll put it on my Christmas list.
Oh, it's so good. I got the 2019 edition, which comes with Origins and Odyssey.
Okay.
It's quite an interesting read. It's how I learned about the Project Philadelphia, or the Rainbow Project.
Okay.
But that's all I've got, and I still get annoyed by the transmedia. Still
I've just
irritates me.
remembered something else I've got. I have got one comic, which is the Origins comic, which I think was released as a series of 4 editions. But four issues in the series. But I've got sort of, I don't know what you call it. I'm not an expert about comics. I've got the compilation that's all of the stories put together. Um, but yeah, as we've discussed, I don't think you and I are really into comics. Um,
Comics are tricky. So this is why I really want to do this episode with you, especially James, instead of bringing someone who's read the transmedia. It's just we're both novices with transmedia.
True.
I'm a book lover at heart. I read Shakespeare and Stephen King, anything to get my mitts on. But I'm a novice for Assassin's Creed Transmedia, and I think for people listening who want to get invested in the series, it's good that we voice our opinions as novices because the comics are impossible to find. Like, there's no comic book store in England you could just walk into and pick up a comic. It's not like America where they have like Big Bang Theory style comic stores. We don't have them in England. Well, not that I know of.
You know, there is a shop not so far from me. It's, I mean, I don't ever go in there because I don't buy magazines, but it's called Magazine Heaven. And I've walked past the front of it and it is full of magazines. That's the kind of place where you might find these comics, but I've never looked. Other than that, I guess it's eBay. I don't really know.
I've had,
Where do you buy comics? I suppose online at Waterstones or other bookshops, maybe.
I've been in Waterstones and they do have a few Marvel and DC comics, but I've never once in my life seen a Assassin's Creed comic there. I've tried to get one on Google Play before for £1 because I had a deal,
Mm.
but reading on a 6-inch TV phone screen is awful. It gives you headaches. And my Kindle's only like a 4-inch screen. I'm not reading the comic on there.
Yeah, it's Kindle script like them. I've been reading. I've just finished reading. It's not part of the Transmedia, but I tell you what, if anyone listening to this loves Black Flag, I've just finished reading a general history of the pirates, which was written in 1725, I think, and it was one of the sort of original. It's one of the primary sources that we have about the actions of Blackbeard, Stede Bonnet, and so on and so on. Now that book, in the original print, it would have it contains tables that list all the crew members and which ones were executed and which ones weren't. And those tables just don't translate very well to the Kindle screen. That would be much better printed. And I'm thinking it's the same with a comic with the artworks. You know, is that really going to look good monochrome on a tiny little Kindle screen? I suspect not.
I got Kindle Unlimited for free for 2 months, which is probably the worst thing ever because the free books are terrible. And I did download Secret Invasion, which is a Marvel comic, and it was impossible to read. The panels are too small.
Yeah,
The color
yeah.
doesn't bounce. It's just impossible to read. So how the heck do you read comics in England? But
eBay, I guess. Can you buy them direct from Ubisoft? I wonder on their
I
store.
I would not know because I didn't even know Ubisoft had a store.
Again, I don't know how this works for console players. Whether you could, I presume not. You've got to buy the games either physically or through the Xbox store or the PlayStation store. But Ubisoft does have, because I'm going to look at it now while we talk. Ubisoft does have an online store. Um, Obviously, generally you would go there for video games. Although if the damn cookie thing could stop popping up, I could have a look. And their website's a pain. Not that I can see.
Amazon has them, and I'm very
Mm,
speedy of Amazon.
mm,
And so the Xiaojun Volume 4, Blade of Xiaojun Volume 4, Volume 4 is £9.67,
okay.
or a Kindle edition £8, or Dynasty Volume 1 is £11.25. And to a lot of people, that doesn't seem a lot. £11 for a comic?
Yeah, but that's a lot when you. And again, we are not experts here, but if you go to the wiki, they've got in their top of the Assassin's Creed wiki, they've got a drop down menu that lists all the comics by each publisher. 3, 9, 13, 17, 18. You're looking at maybe 20 different comics at £10 a comic. You've got to really be dedicated to the franchise if you want to read them all, buy them all, I mean, and read them all.
Which is kind of a big problem. Like, I've just noticed here, Dynasty Volume 1 is £11.25, and
Mm,
Dynasty Volume
mm.
2 is £9.99, so that's 22 quid for all them. And comics can take about 2 seconds to read because the writing's so small and the panels. Is it worth it? Like,
You're asking the wrong guy because I would say no, it probably isn't. I really would.
but
But
that's the thing. To people dedicated to transmedia, the answer would be yes, and that is a great market to achieve. But novices that are, you know, hooked to the franchise, like I am, I've played 15 years. Is it really right to be pushing all that money on comics, especially since you have the whole argument of non-conical and conical? You know, the Xiao Jun comics are apparently non-conical. Like,
so, uh, forgive the dumb question. What's the point?
that's the thing. Like, there's webcomic Assassin's Creed non-conical, ACLE comic. This is also wiki non-conical, AC Awakening non-conical, Assassin's Creed Cinders non-conical, uh,
Mm,
Assassin's Creed Bande Desene, which must be a French comic, semi-conical. Like, why? Like, to be honest, in my opinion, non-conical or semi-conical, great. That's where transmedia thrives the best. But canonical is where you literally
mm.
fall into a big trap. Look at Victoria Babo. big player in Heresy,
Yep.
big player in the Charlotte Cruise comics,
Was she?
mass. Um,
Okay.
I believe so. I have to get the wiki up in a minute. Aha. Um, but then she appeared in Odyssey,
Yeah.
and everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Who's she?" Oh yeah, she is a massive transmedia character that
Mm.
you know.
I think the other guy that we never see him, but we hear his voice over the radio. Kiyoshi, I can't remember his surname, but he's like the security guy protecting um, Layla while she's in the Animus and Victoria when they're in that loft flat in London, reliving Cassandra's memory. So the guy Kiyoshi, I think he comes from. I remember reading somewhere that he comes from the Transmedia. I mean, I suppose. I mean, it doesn't matter that transmedia exists. But I suppose the question I would love to ask is who's it for? I guess it's for the most hardcore of hardcore fans, or is it for a totally different demographic, fan base, geographic area that really rather prefers to consume comics because they're not retelling the game stories, which is fine. Um, I suppose, like, I'm just looking here at the article I've got in front of me. Assassin's Creed Brahmin, released October 2013, tells the story of Arbaz Mir, who was Jayadit Mir, or Henry Green's father. So I quite like the idea of the transmedia adding backstory, if you like, or historical detail to the characters we actually see or play as in the games. That seems fair enough. Um, but it is interesting. Like, what is the purpose of the transmedia? I mean, from a business point of view, I guess it makes money. Great. Um, but yeah, it is an interesting one that there are such a wide variety of different comics out there. Because Charlotte de la Cruz, who you mentioned, she's a character only from the comics, I think, but she's quite a significant character in the modern day plotline.
Yeah, because I was actually right. Victoria Bobo was in the Last Descendants trilogy, not Charlotte Cruise. It was Layla that worked with Charlotte Cruise,
Right.
but that's never actually just mentioned in Odyssey only because of that weird time gap. But here comes the big problem: Juno, the biggest
Ah,
story arc
here we go.
since
Yes.
Assassin's Creed 2, dumped into a comic. Even Desmond had a child, I believe, in the comics. Like, this
Is
is
that Elijah, I think, isn't it?
yes, Elijah. See, this is the problem. I have no issues with the Transmedia. Like, I think Last Descendants is one of the best Assassin's Creed books out there, along with Heresy, because, in my opinion, they tell stories from the Assassin's Creed world that are canon, but they don't influence the games. And
Mm.
because they don't influence the games, you can read them. But when you get characters like Victoria Bobo, who's in Heresy, then Last Descendants, and then in the game, to casual players who are just picking up the franchise and getting into it, you're then basically saying to them, right, you like this character, do you want to know more? Great, go read all these books. And then you understand this one character.
I mean, the other way of doing it would be, I don't know, this might be a really terrible idea. This is why I don't work in game development. But if there's a comic, like a prequel comic, like Brahman, telling the backstory of Arbaz Mir leading into the story of Underworld, which is the novel that then leads into Syndicate, why not give players who have paid 60, £70 for the game a PDF copy or, voucher code for their Kindle or whatever, so they can read the comic that sets up the characters? I don't know.
That would be a great idea. Like, I think comics should have free reign over the universe because I think, as you said, with your suggestion, it's great. I think you and I forgot her name got me into Heresy, and
Marie Claude, you're
Marie
thinking of.
Claude.
Yep.
Yes, she got me, and I thank you both for it because that book is fantastic.
It really is.
But I want more books like that.
mm,
They are
mm,
connected to the world from what we see in the games, but the story is new. It's fresh. It's gripping, and you know for a fact that no game's going to continue the storyline, and you know that you're not going to get ruined because you won't know what's going to happen next because it's been dropped to a comic. If that makes sense. So stories like that is great, but
yeah.
when
Yeah.
you look at Valhalla, like this is a real reason why I want to discuss it with someone like you, is how much has Valhalla got that's confusing as hell? Because there's a Valhalla webcomic, there's AC Valhalla comic, there's Song of Glory, which I literally despise. I'm going to explain that in a minute.
I'm looking now again. I'm only scrolling through the menus on the wiki to try and so there's for the novels there's Gearman Saga, Sword of the White Horse, the Magus. Actually, I don't know if the Magus conspiracy is part of Valhalla or not. What are the comics that cover? Um, oh, there is a comic just called Valhalla. Okay, fine. Oh, and then there's Valhalla song. Jesus Christ, Valhalla song of Glory, Valhalla Blood Brothers. It's just all right. I get your point now, Declan. There's a lot.
And this is the whole point from a novice point of view. If Valhalla is your first game, then there's the Valhalla graphic novel. Well, what does that tell you? Oh, it's a webcomic, right? But what's the story? Because it's going to be kidnapped by Ava, a powerful Viking. Edward copies Monk's 600 reason which pushed his brother to commit suicide. Huh? How does this fit in with the Valhalla games? Okay. Forgotten Myths. Apparently a prequel to the DLC. Thank you, Ubisoft. Don't give us a prequel into the game. Put it into a
There's a
transmedia.
prequel for which DLC is that? For Wrath of the Druids or
By the looks of things, yes.
okay.
And then there's Song of Glory, a prequel comic to Valhalla, which still has me annoyed that it exists.
So okay, maybe this is a better way of explaining the point I was trying to make earlier. You and I, we like this franchise. We like these stories and these characters. We host a podcast about it, so we're clearly interested to learn more. But I didn't know any of these comics existed. So who are they advertising them to? Who are they for? Because you'd think we would be the target audience, but maybe we're just not reading the right news articles, or maybe we're not subscribed to the right Ubisoft mailing list. But if you've got a DLC coming up like Wrath of the Druids or Siege of Paris, and there's a prequel that maybe sets up some of the characters or why Avor's going to go to Ireland and what it's her cousin Bareth, isn't it, who's the sort of king of Dublin. And there's maybe a comic that tells his story that sets up the war with Flon Shinner and so on. Why not tell players, hey, you're about to start the DLC, or hey, you're interested in the DLC, you might like this prequel comic or whatever. I just how is it advertised, and how do we not see it until years later? Like I say, maybe we're just looking in the wrong place.
And see, this is just generally why it's better that I brought this topic up for just me and you. We're both novices at all this transmedia stuff, so clearly this stuff has flown under our radar. So we're big fans of the franchise. So why are we not in the? I knew about the prequel comic because it was part of the crapstorm that was the marketing. Because when Valhalla was released, male and female Eivor are canon. There's going to be a prequel comic as well. So who's the prequel comic about? Oh,
Ah, okay.
it's about female Eivor because we've given our transmedia artists free reign to pick between male or female. That was their cover story because Matthew K. Derby, who writes
Mm,
German Saga, which
mm.
I will admit he did a great job with the book. I just hate
Didn't he write the
Last
Last
Descendants.
Descendants as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a fantastic writer, and I would recommend his writing for German Saga because it's good. I just hate the characters not mentioned in Valhalla when it should.
yeah.
But he did go on record saying, I chose female Eivor. And this is where I got really annoyed with the comic because they spent so much marketing on male or female, both a canon, blah, 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 that when you think of the transmedia, you now think, well, some people think, well, actually, no, male Eivor is my canon character. So, but no, the comic has to be the female because she's canon.
Mm.
And then you get in that whole really annoying fact of stop making us do male and female choices, just give us a female choice.
Just
It's literally,
commit. Yeah,
yeah,
go all in, commit.
because that would have made the comics a bit more interesting to fans. Because comics female. Oh, cool.
Mm,
So it's going to be the
mm,
same story from Avor's perspective. But Forgotten Myths, because I've just opened Dark Horse, which is a comic provider, is literally a prequel to Dawn of Ragnarok. Follow Balder, the valiant son of Odin, on his quest to forge a lasting peace among the realms. Thor, Balder, and Heimdall have discovered trouble lurking at Asgard's borders once again. A mighty fire giant from Muspelheim is spreading the land of the Aesir. In the aftermath of the raging battle, Balder discovers that the Muspels are now massacring at the gates of Svartalfheim and begins a journey to bring peace to the realms. That should not have been in Transmedia. Come on, that is
we
literally.
we have spoken at length. Well, you and Adam from Ludo History, and you spoke at length about Dawn of Ragnarok and the story that they chose to tell in that game. Yeah, yeah.
If we ignore the story, that is a prequel. That gives us everything of why is Balder in Svartalfheim? Why is Odin looking for him in Svartalfheim? Why is all the Aesir in Svartalfheim? Why is, well, most of them, not Aesir, all lurking in Svartalfheim? Ubisoft, should we give them a free mission to explain it? No, give them a 5 comic book series and make them pay money.
Mm,
From a
mm,
novice's point of view, this doesn't seem healthy. It just seems like a cash grab.
yeah, yeah. It's a strange one, isn't it? Like I say, unless you
Strange.
really research it, how do you know they exist? So therefore, how do you get the full story? So, who's it for?
I don't, I know it's best to try and be positive about the transmedia and give a lot of novices reasons to buy the transmedia. And I think,
Well,
you
I
know,
mean, we're not shills for Ubisoft, so don't buy anything that we
no,
talk about just because we say it. You know.
no, but
Um,
at the same time, as a novice who gets into the franchise, transmedia is probably not the best thing to go into. It's over convoluted. But would you
mm,
recommend, truthfully, that people play and read Unity's novel at the same time?
you've picked the one that I probably know best. Um, right. So you, oh, I've got to think this through. I want to try and give a thoughtful answer. So you know that I'm a big fan of Unity. I think I pretty much say that every time we do any kind of episode. But I'm not blind to its flaws. There are gaps in the story if you just play the game which don't make a lot of sense. There are some things like, for example, in Dead Kings, Arno is working against Napoleon to retrieve the Apple of Eden and send it off to Alexandria for safekeeping. But then years later, Arno is working. If you when you play the co-op mission, Infernal Machine, Arno is working to protect Napoleon. Arno at some point earns his Master Assassin outfit, but at the end of Unity's main game, he's been kicked out of the Assassin Brotherhood. So he must have rejoined at some point in order to get his fancy robes. So there are absolutely gaps in the story. There are gaps in the timeline. Like a lot of stuff happens March, April 1791. That's when a lot of Sequence 7 takes place. I think Sequence 6 into Sequence 7. And then there's a long gap of about 4 or 5 months. Actually, no, it might be more than a year to Sequence 8. Um, so there are these big time jumps. Elise is very unhappy to see Arno when he escapes from the Bastille and goes to her house in Paris. Why? What's been going on? Why does she look so? Why is she so sort of upset and miserable? Well, those gaps are simply not explained in the game, and you have to just kind of accept it and just move on. If you read the novel, and if you read the Abstergo Handbook, particularly let me talk about the Abstergo Handbook. So there is, it's all presented in universe. There are Arno's letters to his father. So after Arno is adopted or protected, shall we say, by Francois de la Serre, he tells Arno to write regularly to his now deceased father as a way of expressing his feelings and sort of grieving. and it's something that Arno carries on throughout his life, and he does it as an adult. So in the Abstergo handbook, the Templars have in their archives the letters that Arno wrote to his father at certain points during Unity's story. So you can, if you want to get a complete understanding of Arno and Elise and more backstory on the Templars and Germain and what he wants, and a little bit more backstory on the Assassin Brotherhood and what they are trying to do, you do need to almost do like a chronological transmedia playthrough. So you play the sequence in the game, then you jump over and read Arno's letter from the handbook, then you jump to the novel and read, I don't know, half a dozen chapters that explain what Elise has been up to, and then you jump back to the game and play the next segment. To be honest, you should probably go and read an encyclopedia to catch up on what's actually happening in the French Revolution. But um, yeah, if you want a proper understanding of all the characters and what they are thinking and feeling and why they are thinking and feeling those things, plus of course Freddie, who's a legend, Freddie Wetherell, yeah, you do need to consume, in my opinion, at least the novel and the game, but probably the Abstergo handbook as well, to give you that complete picture. There is a canonical playthrough guide, so if you want to play the game, because Unity is main story single player missions, co-op missions, and heists. Now again, there's a very thorough piece of research that I think the wiki team have done. I don't know where it's documented, but I know it is documented on the subreddit, where they have said, right, this is the order to play the missions, all of them, to get the right chronological order. So I mean, if you want to be a massive nerd about this, you can really go deep and do a proper chronological game, novel, transmedia playthrough, and that would give you like the most, I suppose, immersive and the deepest understanding of these characters. I don't know if any other games would do the same, because I suppose perhaps you could do Forsaken. Actually, yeah, that might work. Because Black Flag's novel covers a little bit of so the Kenway saga. You could read Black Flag's novel, then you'd play the game, but then you'd be flipping between the game and the novel, because the novel although the novel covers Kenway's younger years, it then covers the time period covered by the game. Then it covers Edward Kenway's return to England. Then I guess you'd read Forsaken. Then you'd play AC3. But then I think the events of Rogue overlap. So you'd almost need to jump between 2 or 3 novels and 2 or 3 different games. But you could do it, and you could almost have like a transmedia, what's the right word, experience, that would give you, again, real kind of immersive understanding of these characters and who's doing what and when and why. And yeah, Forsaken's a great novel. I enjoyed the Black Flag novel a lot, actually. I know the sort of middle, or the latter 2/3 of the book are retelling the game, but I enjoyed it. It was good, and Forsaken's excellent. So actually, Rogue's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think Rogue is the only one that doesn't have a companion novel, or maybe it's covered in comics and we just don't know about it. But yeah, Rogue is the odd one out there. So that's a very long answer to your question.
I think Rogue is what I suggested to Craig. I think Rogue is basically the first. Now I'm going to choose my words carefully because I don't want people to read into this, so please don't. But I really think Rogue's the first non-Assassin's Creed game tester, where they tried to tell like a Templar story under the Assassin's Creed banner, because it was literally that filler game. You had Black
Mm,
Flag,
mm,
then Unity on next gen, and then you just had
yeah.
that little Rogue slotted in for just PS4, where it's not an Assassin's Creed game because he plays a Templar technically. So it's like the first time when they just want to do a Templar game without not calling it Assassin's Creed. So it's, if that makes sense. So I think they're just trying to like not cover that period properly. Just like, we tested a Templar story, we're leaving it at that. Let's get back to our usual stuff.
I think we spoke about this before, haven't we? But we need a good Templar story, a good update to what the Templars are doing and who's in charge now and all that stuff.
So I think see, this is just kind of making me feel that there's now three branches of Assassin's Creed fans. There's the novices who've just got into the brand, and I'm not going to use the term casual because that's not fair in my opinion. But the novices who are just getting into it, just learning the ropes. Then there's the fans, me, you, and everyone else. And then I really think we've got the hardcore fans who are able to then balance the plethora of Assassin's Creed Transmedia and games to make the most coherent gameplay playthrough ever, which my
Mm,
brain hurts because
mm,
I don't mind the idea of game retellings because they're really great for reading like a canonical story playthrough if you haven't touched the game in ages. They're a great pick me up if you need to replay the game without replaying the game. But when you get a game like Odyssey, where there's no canon ending, so you give everybody a book, that's not fun. Come on.
yeah, yeah.
Look, everybody, Alexios and Cassandra are canon, but technically Cassandra's canon if you've got a book. Oh my god, marketing. What planet were you on that day? Not to be rude.
This
And
is
then you,
where I guess an editorial decision just clashes with the trying to tell the right story, keep it consistent. It's the only thing we can say is let's Valhalla handled the whole gender choice gameplay thing much better than Odyssey. Um, let's hope that progress continues. That whatever happens in future games keeps things consistent with how the animus is supposed to work, consistent so that players know. Because I know I've made this point in the past, but I'll make it again. I'm a moderator on the Odyssey subreddit, and even now, 3.5 years after release, people still come into the subreddit and they'll say, I've just finished the game as Alexios, and I've learned that he's not the official playable character. I feel cheated, or what the hell was I doing for the last 60, 80, 100 hours? Um, and that's where these editorial decisions, and I don't blame the devs for this, not at all, because I suspect these decisions were taken at much higher levels. Um, these things just end up leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouths. Like you've said this in the past, you shouldn't have to buy the Odyssey novel to work out the correct dialogue choices you need to make in the game to get the sort of correct ending. Um, so it's tricky.
but at the same time, I also think the games can learn from Transmedia, and I think Last Descendants is the best one for this because technically Syndicate plays with the idea but doesn't play with it properly in a good sense of you could give people a male and female lead in Assassin's Creed and have both canon by following Last Descendants Animus rules, which are, and for Transmedia to explore this and not games is mad. Four people can experience the same memory simulation at the same time if those memories connected together. So Jacob and Evie, for example, you could
Yeah,
that you could play the whole memory simulation both of them because the memories intertwined, but there isn't, in my opinion, equal enough diversity for both characters for both to stand out. Sometimes I feel Evie stands out more than Jacob sometimes. But you could, if you played around that, let's say in Valhalla setting for a big open world like they tried with the mythical realms, you can see that with the transmedia of having one memory simulation where four people, are all part of it, but they're all in sync. You could really have done Odyssey where Alexios' story is him as Deimos and Cassandra is Cassandra. You could have had them two playthroughs together so people could be male and female and both be canon.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the memories intersect at different points, just as Last Descendants to discuss that people come together and it intersects and probably be difficult as hell as one person to play as two memory streams because it's four people in Last Descendants playing through one memory stream. But what's the harm of exploring that diversity of the animus?
I think the key point there, and this kind of connects to what we spoke about last week with replayability, is if you put the animus front and center of the game and you make it very clear to us, the player, that we are playing or reliving memories through this device, then you can have some fun with it, and you can have some flexibility with it, as long as you make it clear that it is, it follows the rules of the memories and genetic memories as established in the game. But when you try to hide the animus or minimize it, then you in some ways you give yourself more freedom, but then I don't know, you lose a bit of the magic, I think. Um,
I think
yeah,
as well
I
for
tell
novel.
you one thing. You've convinced me that when I finish my current book, I will need to go and buy Last Descendants, because you've said multiple times it's really worth reading.
The first one is I haven't been able to afford the last two yet, but from what I read of the first one, it was very engaging. The whole animus perspective of having four or more people have one simulation, but they can connect.
Yeah,
There was that really good line in it. I haven't read it in a while, so I'm not going to paraphrase, but somebody didn't have a memory point, so they were free to explore the animus wherever they wanted, so they could do stuff their ancestor wouldn't do, but they had to get back at a specific time for when there would be a memory, and they couldn't fight that memory, so they had to do what the memory was.
so that's
And
cool. So you've got fixed points where the animus
yeah,
needs you to relive the memory, but in between, and this is kind of what the games have always done, the animus fills in the blanks and gives you the freedom to do what you want to do.
essentially, and there's also in that Last Descendant story, a recurring character family bloodline. I'm not going to say who, which was nice. But Transmedia is a healthy approach, but from a novice's point of view, it's just too convoluted. And
Yeah, and where do you start? I suppose
there's
that's the thing, isn't it? When you look at all the lists, how do you know you're picking one that maybe links to the game you've just played or the character you're interested in? It's do you know what we haven't spoken about yet? We haven't spoken about films and TV.
yes, that was the next one I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
Because my last point would be books would be like season passes should offer discounts on books, or
Well, that's a nice idea.
even one comic free. You know, one comic free and you have to get the rest. How is that not a good idea? Get the season pass, you get one comic free. I'm buying the season pass. I'll get the season pass, get a free book.
I
Um,
like that idea.
so the movies. Actually the best part for novices to take part is to avoid the movie.
Really?
I'm gonna get lynched for this, aren't I?
Well, maybe not. I mean, I've read opinions of as many people that didn't like the movie as did like the movie. And I know that I've said in the past in one of our recent episodes that the first time I watched it, I thought it was a bit pants, and the second time I watched it, I actually thought it was pretty good. So yeah, many opinions are available.
I'm never gonna say it's not pants. I just I want to love the film, but the problem is Assassin's Creed is built on the idea of history, modern day, assassinate stuff. You can't squeeze all that in a movie. Like, I had no idea what the time period was until I read some facts. It was the Spanish Inquisition. I didn't get that the first time around. I was curious of what time period it was, what the history setting was. Um, the fine fact of Callum Lynch fights himself during a bleeding effect. What? I've never seen Desmond punch himself in the face because of the bleeding effect, so that confused me. His parents confused me. The whole film just felt it was going a million miles an hour, and I was like, excuse me, film, I'm confused. Is this prison full of assassin people, or is this prison full of Templars, normal people becoming assassins? You know, I'm still confused this day. Somebody help me.
I had I've watched it twice. I would like to watch it again and maybe sort of sit down and take notes and keep pausing it. But I had two impressions from my second watch through. Well, three. And what I'll say first of all is generally, film, it's kind of an obvious point. A film is a different media to a game. So you have to tell your story in a different way. And I think going in cold, if you knew nothing about the franchise and the history, I think they did a pretty good job of explaining who the Templars are and what their goals are. who the assassins are and what their goals are, and sort of presenting the Animus. Which, let's be honest, Desmond lying in the Animus with the glass screen or the VR goggles on would not be a particularly interesting game. So the Animus as the big mechanical arm I thought was cool. I thought all that was fine. The only issues I had with it was a couple of lines of dialogue from Sophia. Is it Rickin? I think it's Rickin, isn't it? Um, Sophia Rickin makes it sound like, and bearing in mind it's 2016, I think in the modern day, that Abstergo have never before, accessed an apple of Eden to control men's minds. Whereas, of course, we know that they've already had Desmond and many other subjects in the Animus for many years. So that's the bit that's like, come on, you should have referenced what has gone before. So you maybe could have had a reference like, previous subjects escaped or died, and we're trying again, just to sort of bind it a bit more closely to what has happened before. But the only other gripe I have is kind of stylistic. Would that be right? Or the presentation? So right at the start of the game, the opening scene is the Spanish assassins. I think, is it when, are they inducting Callum Lynch into the Brotherhood, or are they? I forget. Doesn't matter. But yeah, they're doing the sort of the pledge or whatever, and that alone explains what they're there for and what they're doing. Um, but before that, they have a load of introductory text, and you don't need the introductory text and then the opening scene that basically does the same thing. So if it was me, just delete the introductory text, throw the audience, throw the viewer right into this weird group of people with hoods, and just go from there. Just get into it. Have faith that people will unpick who the good guys and the bad guys are and who's fighting for what. But
There
other
was
than that, I thought it was pretty good.
there was no introductory text when I watched it, so I'm confused.
Yeah, there's a big spiel like, these people fight for freedom and these people fight for, or seek peace through control, and it's the stuff that we all know. As we don't, that's the thing, we that watch it knowing the franchise don't need to be told this stuff. And I think if you're new, being told all this stuff through on-screen text is, it's kind of a lazy way to do it. Just have a better written or a tighter opening scene. Show don't tell is the usual thing, isn't it? So just have that opening scene with the assassins doing their creed stuff, and that'll set it up. The bad guys are all in black anyway, and they look mean, so we know who the bad guys are. That's all clear from the visual design of the characters. Um, so yeah, but that's those are my sort of two minor gripes. But I thought it was all right. I would like them to make more, to be honest.
Well, I watched it on Film 4. I've never actually seen it on a streaming service, and I'm kind of now wondering if they cut out a lot of stuff from the film just to make the show fit on TV in a nice little time frame.
Could be. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think that may also be what soured my opinion on the fact that every 40 minutes there was a 15-minute blooming ad break.
Ah, ugh,
So
adverts,
you
man.
you got to think watching it on a TV. Maybe that would probably explain why it feels so fast, because you're watching one segment, then you've got a break, then you're watching another segment, then you a break. And I've noticed watching other films on Film 4, there's always stuff missing. Like, Transformers from 2010, I think there was about 30 minutes of content on the DVD that was not in the actual TV schedule.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I may commit to rewatch it. I only watched it once, but I think I will admit the Animus idea was the best thing in history. I
Mm,
love that.
mm.
I, I love the Animus, and I really do not like the Templar scene when they sneak into the Templars and kill the lead Templar to get the apple. I was like, that's too easy.
That's awesome, though.
I was like, it
I
was
think
too
that's
easy.
great. And then they're all on the rooftops at the end,
Oh,
overlooking London.
the rooftops was good. I will admit,
Yeah.
I love the rooftops.
What's
I
cool
think
is you can go into Syndicate and put Evie and Jacob on the same rooftops, basically, overlooking London.
I'm doing that. I didn't know I could, but I'm doing that. So I will admit there is some good things in it. I think I just got soured because Film 4 is just a terrible film to watch any films
Understood.
on.
Understood.
But I will admit the Animus is just the best. So if we're on Transmedia, what about where the hell is the Assassin's Creed TV show gone?
Good question. So there was supposed to be a live action series on Netflix, maybe. When was that announced? A couple of years ago.
Well,
But have you heard anything since? I haven't. It's taking a while.
if if I quickly boot up Google, there is actually one that goes further back. There was actually an animated Assassin's Creed TV show announced by the Castlevania developers
Okay.
all the way back in 2016.
Wow.
So by March 2017, head of content Amir Azar was being developed, teasing it at PAX 2017 on July 5th. I think Adam's the one who did. Uh, no, he's the head of Assassin's Creed content,
Yeah.
but it's done by the same people who were meant to be doing the Castlevania TV show. Um, and he has confirmed in 21 that it was being made. Oh, it's confirmed that series that it was being made by the team behind Television's Rabbids Invasion and the upcoming Far Cry. So it seems like it's secretly changed developers because it was originally meant to be developed by the Castlevania people that I heard, but now it's been redone by a different team. So
Mm,
wow, that has gone through Ubisoft hell.
it does feel like development hell, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
some films spend 10, 20, 30 years in development hell, waiting for the right the writers, the actors, the directors, everything, and the money to all come together to make the thing happen.
yeah.
Um,
So here we go. This is why I love the Assassin Wiki people. Assassin's Creed anime announced by Castlevania Netflix producer, um, and then in 2021 reconfirmed the series, and it was being made by the team behind television Rabid Invasion and the upcoming Far Cry animated television series, Captain Laserhawk. So really, it's gone from a Castlevania producer who I see in the Castlevania series, it was amazing, to a really different person, which doesn't give you faith because, not to sound rude, the Rabbids Invasion is a comedy show, so the team behind it is very used to like the comedy, slapstick, but
mm,
Castlevania is a very gritty, dark fantasy, so you would expect a more teams who's used to gritty and heavy tones to write an Assassin's Creed show, not someone who's used to comedy. It's like a whole
mm.
actor thing. Like you wouldn't expect a comedian actor to go into a horror film.
Well, you say that, but actors that start out as comedians can give fantastic dramatic performances. So I
Oh,
don't know.
well,
I'm not in. I'm maybe not what you want to hear initially, but I'm not too concerned at the moment.
I think I'm just more concerned with the development time. Like 2017, 2021, it's still in the works. So, well, that's
Mm,
5 years of
mm.
nothing. That's a long time. And then the live action, and it's on Netflix.
Well, with Netflix recent news, I wonder how many things will get cut that haven't yet been started in development. With Netflix share price collapsing and their subscriber numbers dropping and all that stuff, I wonder. I wonder.
And this is where Ubisoft has a key market for Transmedia that they're not actually thinking about that I'm aware of. What if they made Assassin's Creed Infinity a Disney slash Netflix style platform where they could put their own TV shows, their own books to be bought, their own comics to be viewed on, their own webtoons, and you can individually access or buy games from that platform as a monthly subscription.
They might do that. I mean, they could do that. I don't know if I'd want. Mm, if it goes behind that kind of paywall, I'm not sure.
In my opinion, and I know I am very biased on this, but Game Pass is a lifesaver for me. I don't have a lot of money for games,
Mm,
so a
mm.
10.99 price for over 150 games a month, not bad. Imagine paying $10.99 and you get every Assassin's Creed comic available to read on there, links to buy books at 50% off, for example, all the Assassin's Creed TV shows on there, and you can either stream, because they have got the streaming service they've built now, all Assassin's Creed games on there. So PlayStation players could download this Assassin's Creed Infinity product and stream Assassin's Creed 1 to bypass backwards compatibility. Yes, it's a giant content paywall. Is it healthy for the industry? Probably not.
Mm.
Great way for novices and hardcore fans to get Assassin's Creed content? Maybe so. I don't know. I just don't like the fact of that I'll never be able to watch an Assassin's Creed TV show if it's on Netflix.
Yeah, let's wait and see. I mean, I would give one chance in three or one chance in four it actually gets made. They've been developing it for so long. Um,
And Netflix has literally just been cancelling things like it's going out of fashion.
exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Like Stranger Things, apparently from what I saw on Twitter, has been cancelled.
Isn't series four about to be released? I think,
Yeah, exactly. Netflix,
and then
why?
that's the last one, is it?
Apparently, but in my opinion, Stranger Things is one of the most popular TV shows. At the hype for season 4,
Mm,
after 5
mm.
seasons, it's been cancelled. Well, technically, they're splitting season 4 into 2 parts.
Oh, okay.
So after season 4, part 2, which is season 5, it's then being cancelled. Again, I agree you should not carry on a show. You should let it run its course naturally, but that's going to lose them big viewers.
It's tricky because yeah, I don't mind if Stranger Things ends after four series. I feel it's become a little. The first series was great, and it's progressively become a bit less inventive and fresh. We will still watch it because it's a favourite in our household, but I don't mind if a program runs its course and then is cancelled. Um, but yeah, they're not having a good time at the moment, so I wonder,
I think
will this project continue?
probably not, because literally, I heard the live action of Cowboy Bebop, which I've never seen, but apparently that people really loved that. It was a smash hit. Cancelled. Like, wow, that's nice. Sabrina, which was a really amazing Netflix show, cancelled.
Right.
Like, it was so popular, and yet they keep terrible stuff on there, like
Sabrina,
Riverdale.
as in Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yeah, the Chilling Adventures. It was like dark
I think I
fantasy
watched the
version.
original many years
Yes,
ago.
the original's best, but they did like a really um gothic supernatural style version where it's like proper witchcraft and demonology, and
Okay.
it was actually really gripping. It had a good storyline, but they just cancelled it, and that meant the
Mm,
last season was just terrible because they cancelled it.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I want to ask you a very quick question whilst we're talking about film and TV. Have you now watched Lineage and Embers?
I watched Embers, yes,
Okay.
just not Lineage.
Okay.
Embers was good, you know.
Embers is great. Lineage
I
is pretty fun as well, to be honest. You should definitely watch it.
I just still didn't
It's not very
realize that.
long.
I just can't believe that I played that Shao Jun Assassin's Creed Chronicles and did not know the mentor is Ezio.
Well, you can be forgiven because the voice actor that does Ezio's voice in Chronicles China is, I mean, it's not Ezio. So you know we our ears know to pick out Roger Craig Smith's voice. So yeah, yeah. I don't think you can be blamed for missing that connection.
I just can't believe Embers and Lineage existed, and I've been playing the franchise since its creation, and I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it was a
Oh, I didn't
thing.
know until when was it? End of last year, I think. And someone said, "But you know, you've played the EXO games, yes. You do know that there's these two short films. Maybe we should make that clear to anyone listening. So there are two short films, um, Lineage and Ember. So chronologically, Lineage tells the story of Ezio's father. So if you want a sort of chronological experience, watch Lineage first. It's available on YouTube. Um, then go and play AC2 and Brotherhood, and then play Revelations. And then when you've finished Revelations, go and watch Embers. And, you know, you're going to need tissues. Yeah. So they're both short, but worth watching.
Well, they're worth watching until the end of Embers and you just want to go crawl into a blanket.
Indeed. Yeah.
And then everyone's
Yeah.
just like conspiracy theorying of over the end. Have you ever seen that? Everyone just does not know what happens at the ending. Like, how did Ezio die?
It's spoiler alert. It's a heart attack, isn't it?
But some people think he was assassinated.
Maybe.
Some people
Maybe.
think Templar did it, and it's like I've seen the conspiracy Reddits, and oh, they're so good. It frame by frame of him on the bench and people who sit next to him, and did they do this? It's wild.
Did who did Darby write Embers? I'm just because I'm just checking the credits now. Yeah, Darby wrote. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Do you know what
Wow.
suddenly made me say it? So I was very while you were speaking, I was very quickly scrolling through the wiki article for Embers, and at the end they quote the letter that Ezio writes to Sophia, and he leaves in his study. When I was a young man, I had liberty, but I did not see it. I had time, but I did not know it. I had love, but I did not feel it. Many decades would pass before I understood the meaning of all three. And now, the twilight of my life, this understanding has passed into contentment. And I was just reading that thinking, hang on a minute, that sounds like Darby's writing. I need to check and see if he wrote, and he did. He wrote Embers. So yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Our Lord and Savior
God,
Darby
I've
strikes
just turned
again.
into a nerd if I can read some text like this and think, hang on a minute, that sounds like such and such a writer. So anyway, all good.
It's because we had the legend on a few weeks ago, and
We did. We did.
oh,
That was a
I'm
good
so
chat.
that was good. I miss talking to Darby.
I mean, I don't know if he's always available, but he's probably a busy guy.
He's very busy, but he
Yeah.
mentioned about like Shakespeare and writing for Assassin's Creed. And I just read Shakespeare the other day, and I was like, imagine Edward just having a nice little Shakespearean conversation. Oh, that would be just perfect. Just, ye boat of yonder, I sailed through thee.
I would like someone to write Edward's story, but in the style of the general history of the pirates. Because that book has got, I mean, it was written in the 1720s. It has its own unique writing style. I would like someone to do like a short 8-page story of Edward Kenway's life, but in the style of the general history of the pirates. I haven't got the creative ability for it, but that would be fun.
I really want to find this book.
It's free
Is,
on Kindle
right, where's
because
my Kindle?
it's 275 years old. Or I can't do the maths, brain's tired, but yeah, it's
Right,
free.
right, we're recording now. I really don't care what people say. I've just booted Amazon up.
All right.
Right, I'm gonna Google this into Amazon because if it's free, I can buy it on Amazon now. What are we looking for? General.
I think it's called A General History of the Pirates, but pirates, because it's an old book, is spelt Pyrates.
Wow, it is on here. There's lots of editions of it. There's audiobooks for free. Kindle editions at £4 apparently.
What? Oh, I thought it was free. I'm sorry, mate. I was wrong
Or
there.
49p. I
Happy
can
days.
I've got 49p. I thought it was. Well, I am now going to look into it anyways because
Definitely, mate. It's great. So I mean, I'll be honest. There's probably, I think there's 16 chapters or something like that. Now I skimmed over the ones that didn't cover the characters that we know from Black Flag. I'm going to be honest with you. But the telling the stories of those characters was great. Um, so the front cover, because books in those days apparently had really long titles. So the front cover is A General History of the Pirates from their first rise and settlement in the island of Providence, which I think is where Nassau is, to the present time. Then there's like a subheading: with the remarkable actions and adventures of the two female pirates, Mary Read and Anne Bonny, and of the characters that we would know from Black Flag. So Mary Read and Anne Bonny, of course, Teach, who's Blackbeard, Bonnet, Vane, Rackham, and then Roberts, who is our sage. The chapter covering Roberts is very long because he had a long and successful pirate career. But yeah, really, really interesting to read the stories that were recorded just after the end of this era of piracy.
I now want it. Right,
Put it on your
I
wish
think
list.
I think I found it for 49p. I think it's the right one. It's got a preface and having taken more than ordinary pains in collecting the materials. Ooh, it sounds interesting. You're pirating. Totally off topic, but hey, it's books.
It's all good reading.
I like books. I like books a lot. I'm just really unhappy with how Assassin's Creed's handled the transmedia.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
too confusing. I think I'm gonna defend on my little hill that I've got that if you're gonna do transmedia, do what the Last Descendants and Heresy did. Give us new, engaging stories set in the Assassin's Creed world. Just, don't add, don't create, in my opinion, um, books that tie in to the movies, then or games, and then suddenly add the characters into games, expecting us to know who the characters are. Don't finish important storylines in transmedia because I'm going to cry again.
Indeed. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's just generally it.
Mm,
Continue with the transmedia. Just
mm.
stop making it so complicated for us novices. Do you not know how hard it is for podcasters like us to know what we're talking about when there's like millions of transmedia we haven't read yet?
I haven't got a clue, mate. I ask you or people like Andrew from who was on the show last week if I get
and
stuck.
and I will admit, when people ask me a transmedia question, I go on Google.
Yeah. Yeah.
I look for Google. I'm like, Google, who is this character? And the Google's like, oh, it's from a comic. Oh,
The
there's a
wiki
comic.
is a great resource. So yeah.
Yes, go to the wiki. Novices of the world, if you're struggling with transmedia, go to the wiki. It's the life savior of everything. But I think that's all we've got time for tonight, unless
I think
James has
so.
got.
I think so, mate.
Oh, I do have one question actually. Just popped into my head.
Mm.
If you could create your own transmedia story, what would you have it about?
Ooh. My own transmedia story. See, my preference is always going to be if we're going to tell a story in this franchise, do it in a game because I prefer games. But transmedia. I mean, in general, although I've read all of the main series of novels, it's the novels that just retell the games are not so interesting. They're fine, but they're not so interesting. So it would definitely be something independent. Um, I think I'll come back to what I said before, which is a follow up or another story in the vein of heresy. Tell us who are the modern day Templars or Abstergo senior people? What are they doing? What's going on? What projects are they running? And maybe those projects then do feed into games, but not in a way that requires you to read the novel to know what's going on. So yeah, I think I want me some Templar stuff. What about you?
And I want Templar stuff. Templar stuff is fun. Um, I've tried to write it, but I literally have the biggest writer's block. I just want a, a story where it's like an introduction, and you see where I'm going with this, where an architect finds a information stone that replays a story from the Isu times, and the whole book is just pure Isu lore with no mythology filters. Just an archaeologist is just stuck listening to an Isu war tape or something from the Isu Civil War. Perfect. That's all I want. No mythology filters, just Isu-ness. I'm very hard to please.
I mean, you've had Dawn of Ragnarok, you've had Fate of Atlantis, you've had your Isu content.
Yeah, but that's like not the East. That's ticked my mythology content that I wanted since Ezio found a vault under the Vatican. I now want the Isu lore that we got through the anomalies where you got to see the truth video. I want more of that, but better. I don't know how to word it.
I understand, mate. I like reading, and you can take your time in a book to set up a world, set up characters, and whatever in a way that just different in games, isn't it?
It is, and sometimes games have a little bit more restrictions where books don't, as long as they're canon. So I think that is all we've got time for tonight. Actually, would love to hear your thoughts on Transmedia. Have you read Transmedia? Are you a novice that goes struggling to find your place in Transmedia? We won't be stopping here with Transmedia. We actually, I'm hoping to look more into a book review of Heresy because Heresy is epic. Um, love to do German Saga if James can get German Saga because
I will look out for it, mate. Yep.
it's Matthew K. Derby is a fantastic writer. Don't get me wrong, and what he does for German Saga is really good and interesting. Just come on, Avon should have mentioned his name by now. Just that's my point. I'd love to hear your points. So messages on our email at assassinscreed@gmail.com or Twitter at @ALetsTalk or James Tilliquid. Brain's completely fried tonight, like. And what game have I found today? Do you think, James, that's on deal from CD Keys?
Ooh, Elden Ring.
No.
Shame.
One for all of the fans who have yet to try it. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is currently on sale for
Oh, nice.
£8.99 from £16. Kind of half price.
Nice.
Half
Good deal for
price.
a great game.
And if you are on PC, there is the Gold Edition down from £33 to £8.99. I really don't know what the Gold Edition has, but hey, it's down near enough 20 odd quid, so that's a bargain. You can check a link in our comments for the CD keys. Just type Assassin's Creed, and any game you buy on there, we get a little bit of commission back, which will help the show grow and maybe help me and James rise the ranks of novice collectors to, ooh, we now own more books. We will rise the ranks. We will go from one comic to two. I will find a way to get more comics, but maybe one day. And there is probably some Transmedia coming in the future that we may actually get hooked on that we will probably have a look at. So I hope you all have a good week and we'll see you all next week.
See you all soon.